Mark Carney just made some new tariff announcements involving China that already seem to be blowing up in his face. It's going to be a bad year for Canadian steel, especially coming off the announcement we just saw coming out of the Australia and America meeting. It seems like those two countries will be working on some interesting stuff that will also affect Canada. There was another beef trade deal just announced that's going to be hurting Canadians as well. And unfortunately, I gotta call out Alberta. Americans, you're gonna want to stick around for that. Could be a reason as to why you don't want Alberta as the 51st state, unless these things change, which they possibly could. But there's a lot to talk about in today's video, so let's get into it.
Impact of Donald Trump's global trade war. The U.S. president just signed off on 25% tariffs on medium and heavy truck imports starting next month. Now there are exemptions for vehicles compliant with a CUSMA free trade agreement. But there are new questions over Canada's response to tariff threats. Mackenzie Gray joins us from Ottawa. Mackenzie, it appears the
One thing that I do find interesting, again, just from like a media control perspective, is it seems like as of now, the Americans have been the only ones who have been honoring CUSMA to the letter. All of the industries that they've been tariffing have been outside of CUSMA, from what it seems. And Canada was the one caught tariffing the CUSMA items.
Carney government has quietly dropped more levies.
After dumping the vast majority of the counter tariffs on the U.S., and Mark Carney's elbows have come even further down with a new 100-page order, dropping some counter tariffs not just on the U.S., but also on China. Tariffs on China go back to last summer, put in place by Justin Trudeau at the request of the Biden administration. But now dozens of certain types of Chinese steel and aluminum can enter Canada without tariff, a significant disappointment for the Canadian steel industry.
We're going to see a spike of Chinese steel in the country, which is not good because we need to decouple from China, and we've been on the right path, but this is not helpful right now.
Almost every single major industry is like, hey, maybe we don't keep allowing China to dump their products into Canada. And Mark Carney decides now is the time to remove tariffs on Chinese steel and aluminum. So we are already seeing those industries hurting heavily inside of Canada. And now is the time you want to remove the tariffs from those Chinese products. If you're in the steel industry and you saw all those fake announcements, oh, we're going to give you guys so much money and we're going to buy Canadian, and then watch this happen, like, how could you ever trust the Liberal government? I don't know how anybody could trust Mark Carney in any capacity, because this is objectively a very bad announcement, especially, like I said, based on what happened with the Australia and US meeting.
Tariffs on many U.S. products are also being cut, including on some steel and aluminum, but also on goods in the healthcare, public safety, and national defense sector, and even on granular products like portable pizza ovens and certain wines. Specific companies are also getting carve-outs, including an Ottawa purpose-built rental construction project that's getting rolling steel doors tariff-free.
Man, Canada really needed those pizza ovens from the US. If we didn't have those, we would not survive. So if we are going to be lowering the tariffs, why isn't this done through the negotiations? Unless the pizza ovens were also items covered by CUSMA, which we are now just removing the illegal tariffs from.
A lot of the steel that we receive in Canada, what we import in Canada, 80% of it could be replaced with Canadian steel.
Reducing tariffs, the opposite approach compared to what the Ontario Premier wants. But the Prime Minister made it clear this week he wasn't taking Doug Ford's approach.
My favorite part about the entire trade negotiations, all of these economic changes, is we've seen virtue signaling from the Liberals forever about how it's important to focus on pollution and carbon and all these human rights, and especially coming off the No Kings protest that the Canadians were also a part of, even though Canada does indeed have a king. So let's see some of this hypocrisy, shall we, especially around the trade with China. Public attitudes in Canada seem to be warming to China. 27% of Canadians now hold a favorable view of China, up from 16% earlier in 2025 and nearly 3 times the number of recorded in 2021. Despite this, the Angus Reid Institute noted 59% of respondents still view the country negatively. So yes, majority people still view it negatively. However, I want to make a bit of a caveat here. Guys, I don't hate China. I just see them as a clear and obvious economic rival to Fortress America, especially as we're becoming a multipolar world. They are doing everything they can to create control. And I have another article in a second that when they create partnerships, economic partnerships, they don't try and build up the people they have a partnership with, they try to see how much they can get from you. So it's important to realize that our dynamic between the US and what it would be with China is very, very big. But more than half of 51% say Canada should focus more on its economic relationship with China, up 15 points from 2023. Okay, here we go. I'll make sure you guys can see it because it's so funny. On the trade-off between human rights and trade opportunities, concern over the former has fallen. Okay, I'm going to repeat this again. And when it comes to the Liberals, on the trade-off between human rights and trade opportunities, concern over the former has fallen. The poll suggests in 2019, 20, and 2021, more than 70% of the Canadians prioritized human rights in dealing with China. That number has fallen to 52%, with 48% now saying trade opportunities are paramount. So on the trade-off between human rights, trade opportunities are paramount. That's how far the Liberals have devolved in Canada, that they are saying human rights are not that important in China anymore, as long as we don't do a deal with the United States. That's crazy. That's insane. It's very funny that these people are doing leaps in logic to skip the human rights abuses. Not only that, when we get to the Australia rare earth minerals and how this is affecting steel and China and production and all this stuff, you're going to see there's a bigger issue too that the Liberals seem fine with ignoring. But we have this article, and this is from Joel Kotkin. Trump or not, the U.S. is a vastly better partner for Canada than China. This is not an audacious or disrespectful statement. Throughout history, smaller nations, in this case, in terms of population and economy, have always tried to secure alliances with larger and more powerful ones. Sometimes it makes sense to gain leverage by feinting a possible shift in allegiances, but that does not sweep away strategic logic. Simply put, Canada, whose economy has been laggard in recent years, again, nothing to do with Donald Trump or the United States, and already feels the impact of tariffs, has limited options about its long-term post-Trump future. Like other nations, Canada will be forced to support one of two alliances, one anchored by the United States, our most trusted neighbor, one we're attached to, and one other by China, with strong ties to Russia, Iran, and North Korea. There are some who see a pro-China tilt as the path to Canada's independence. Yeah, that'll make us more sovereign. The binational alliance may be hard to endure under Trump, but ultimately the US is a vastly superior choice. The once ultra-green Carney suggesting the Keystone XL pipeline be resurrected demonstrates that we should be fated by geography to progress together. Canada may also want to consider what to expect in a China-centric world. China's historic strategy focuses not on establishing colonies, but vassal states from which it can draw what it lacks, mainly raw materials and customers for its increasingly sophisticated industrial machine. In virtually no case does China try to lift up its client states to the status of competitors, as the US did for Japan, Italy, Germany, South Korea, Taiwan. China knows what it wants in terms of strategic materials, a major trade issue. China has systematically secured preferential access through long-term partnerships that exclude American or Western competitors. Yes, China will always do what's best for China. They do not care about having successful partners, strong nations to work with. As long as China's winning, they're fine. And that's why these announcements coming out of the Australia and US meeting were so important. Let's get into this announcement here.
What should we take away from this meeting with the Prime Minister of Australia that has not, has been a long time coming? It has not happened until now.
Yeah, that's right. A fairly warm meeting between two men from opposite ends of the political spectrum here. The president and the prime minister announcing what I'm told by a White House official is a $3 billion joint venture project to develop critical minerals between these two countries that they believe could yield $50 billion in these minerals, which would become kind of a key piece of the economic puzzle here for President Trump, elements that are necessary for so many high-tech businesses in the United States. It relates to what was, I think, the third country present in this room, the United States' relationship with China. The president, to me, my ear, Kate, going to great lengths to not antagonize Chinese President Xi, suggesting that he believes, despite the back and forth over trade and a lot of kind of mutual economic saber rattling.
This meeting was really important for a couple reasons. Australia has basically been committing to being a mining colony for a while now, which has been working out for them, outside of they obviously have their own Operation Curry Bomb going on there, some immigration issues. But it has been working out that they've been able to produce because it's actually productive. They've been supplying more critical minerals to Japan. They have a process now where they can supply possibly to the US, which will help the US stop relying on China so much, even though it does come down to the processing, because China right now actually controls 90% of the processing. A lot of people don't know this, but these rare earth minerals are not that rare. It's just they're not processed anywhere outside of really China. China has a 90% monopoly on the processing of the minerals. The reason is, which is again why I also think it's so funny how hypocritical the Liberals are. Canada can supply almost, not all, but almost all of the rare earth minerals that the US needs, that the world needs. We've chosen to not do so because of pollution. We don't want to refine it. We don't want to process it. We will just allow China to do it, who has essentially no environmental standards in the world, is now dealing with massive pollution issues. It's being done even worse there than it could have just been done here if we invested, if we innovated, if we found processes to make it more efficient, less dirty. We could have become a major supplier to the world, obviously United States, when it comes to rare earth minerals, and be able to say, hey, we've innovated, we found ways to make it more green, create less pollution. Obviously, countries would choose to work with us and hopefully start to dig into China's monopoly a little bit. On top of that, part of these negotiations, Australia presented they wanted the tariffs on their steel and aluminum to be dropped, or at the very least lowered, so they can get more access to the United States. Another blow to Canada. So as we are dealing with the US tariffs, which we don't have a deal for, and we are now removing tariffs from the Chinese steel and aluminum, Australia, because we know countries all around the world are trying to get their steel and aluminum into the US while Canada doesn't have a deal. So that is another potential blow, even though granted, Australia doesn't send that much steel into the US, and it's probably not going to be a main driver for Australia. It's still another bite into Canada's steel industry, as the steel industry is dying from 1,000 cuts. Or if you prescribe to the theory, it seems like Mark Carney's doing everything he can to destroy Canada. But we got a classic Trump clip with him calling out one of the Australian ambassadors, because we've seen all these dweeb liberal politicians around the world call out Donald Trump from their own country and pretend like they're really tough. But look at what Donald Trump does here.
There's been concern in Australia that it's taken 9 months to get this meeting. Have you had any concerns with this administration, with its stance on Palestine, climate change, or even things the ambassador said about you in the past, the Australian ambassador?
I don't know anything about him. I mean, if he said bad, then maybe he'll like to apologize. I really don't know. Did an ambassador say something bad about him? Don't tell me. I don't. Where is he? Is he still working for you?
Yeah.
Did bad?
Before I took this position, Mr. President.
I don't like you either. I don't, and I probably never will. Go ahead.
It's so funny because all of these politicians just don't understand that Trump will say this stuff to your face. These people think they can tweet stuff, make statements on their national news, and they're tough. They'll never say it to Trump's face ever. Even that ambassador there said, well, it was before I took the position, Mr. Trump. And then he says, oh, well, I don't like you either, and I'm never going to like you. And that's just how he does it. Calls it out to your face. Speaking of calling things out to their face, Mark Carney and the Liberals keep talking about this as being a big win. That Alberta beef is entering Mexico's Costco market where U.S. cuts once reigned. Well, look how good this is. We're increasing our trade with Mexico. We don't need the U.S. We're gonna sell them our beef. We're a beef producing nation. That is true. But if we are a beef producing nation, why do Canadians pay high prices? Because Canadian consumers continue to pay some of the highest beef prices in the Western world. Since January, certain cuts have climbed between 20 and 50%, depending on the province and product. Despite being a major beef producing nation, Canada consistently pays more than the United States. The reasons are structural, smaller market scale, higher transportation costs, and retail landscape dominated by a few powerful grocers. But yeah, it's a huge win for Canada. We already have a low herd supply, but let's sell our beef down to Mexico, as Canadians now are struggling to afford beef. Speaking of beef, our largest beef producing province, of course, is Alberta. And yes, viewers from Alberta, I love you. I love Alberta conservatives, but we have to be able to exist in truth. We have to be able to acknowledge a problem where there is a problem. Because in my personal opinion, if issues like this are not fixed, a sovereign Alberta won't work. 51st state Alberta won't work, and Alberta inside of Canada won't work because it's an existing problem that we're seeing all around Canada. And this is even part of why we ended up with this teacher strike in Alberta, because they're finally letting it slip now that one of the major issues for the Alberta teachers in the teacher strike, on top of everything we're going to talk about, is their class sizes are so overrun. They outgrew because of population growth, which is not childbirth, and they have such little resources to deal with the English second language kids that it's taking away from the actual Albertan kids. So if this is not fixed, there is no sovereign Alberta. There is no Wexit. It's a reminder, this is not me just freaking out at Alberta. These are saying these are issues that can be fixed. But here we have an interview with a mayor of one of Alberta's largest cities. Let's see how strong and awesome this foreign entrepreneur mayor is. I'm sure he did a lot for the city.
Despite the difficulties of the job, so he says he has many accomplishments to celebrate.
We have moved forward on our commitment.
Amarjit Sohi, hey buddy, how doing? He is the Edmonton mayor. Amarjit Sohi. This is Alberta. So Americans, Albertans, everybody who talks about 51st state. This is the mayor, okay?
To building an affordable city, to building an inclusive, welcoming city.
Inclusive, right? But good trigger word there.
We moved the needle on our anti-racism action plan. We moved the needle and really ingrained into our city policies and programs our commitment to reconciliation with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities.
So here we have Amarjit Sohi, who's struggling his way through English in this interview, whose top things that he's proud of is tackling racism and reconciliation with the natives. So keep in mind, we've got a foreign guy who's coming in saying, yeah, we're going to sell out Canada's land, Canadians' rights. Yes, of course, when you bring in people like this who did not grow up in Canada, they are able to rewrite Canada's history, and we see things change in real time. And unfortunately, I have to call out Danielle Smith as well, because once again, Canada cannot move forward until we move past this. I was delighted to welcome my guests to the McDougall Center, yeah, that's a Canadian name, along with many of my Calgary colleagues to celebrate Diwali and Bandi Chordavas. A thank you to everyone who joined us for a morning filled with warmth, connection, and hope for the year ahead. I wish all Albertans gathering in the days ahead of truly joyful celebration of the Festival of Lights. Just FYI, guys, it is not the Festival of Lights. It's actually a religious holiday. The reason they call it the Festival of Lights is because 3 different religions try to claim ownership of Diwali and the Festival of Lights. So they said, you know what? We're all going to have your nonsense demon gods talking about whatever you guys think is the most holy. So let's just call it the Festival of Lights. But why this needs to be called out, and Canadian conservatives, this is important. We have to exist inside of truth or we will go crazy. She dressed up. She wore the costume to pander to these people on their holiday, okay? So until we can call out our conservative leaders as well, yes, for the most part, I like what Danielle Smith has to say. I think she's a good leader in a lot of ways. But when our good leaders do something wrong, do something bad that we made fun of every other leader for doing, we have to also make fun of her. We can't just be so tribal to not hold them accountable, or Canada will not be able to move on. There will be no protecting the actual sovereignty of Canada. Mark Carney and the Liberals are doing everything they can to destroy Canada as a nation. Our economy is falling apart because they continue to make the worst, absolute bonehead ideas that are destructive, destroy and break down our relationship with the United States, who we share an incredible history with. So we can't have Conservative Party politicians acting like that if we want to exist in truth and be able to say what Canadian culture is and fight for a sovereign Canada, which includes deepening integration with the United States. But if you made it this far in the video, you absolutely rock. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We're trying to get these videos out in front of more people. We are trying to grow the channel. If you want to support the channel, you can do it through the link down below. You can also do it directly through YouTube. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.